So next are pro forma and non-GAAP disclosures. And we have to be a little careful of these. Pro forma in kind of accounting lingo means that the company provides the information to you, but is not necessarily in conformance with GAAP and usually is not. And companies do that when they think that they could help you understand their business better if they provided you some further analysis. So the company always has to provide you GAAP. GAAP is required, so they give it to you. But in addition, they give you these pro formas. An example is Amazon. Amazon, let's say, believes that their revenues aren't just the monies they earn from selling their own books and equipment and whatever else they sell, but in their marketplace line of business, where people list their products on Amazon and Amazon sells it for them through their site because they have all the eyeballs on the Amazon site. So if you're one of these marketplace sellers, you gladly pay a little piece, like a commission or a fee, to Amazon for listing your inventory on their site and getting people to buy your product. Amazon cannot count the full amount of that sale in their income statement because they didn't own that gizmo. Let's say you're selling coffee mugs. If a seller sold a dozen coffee mugs, Amazon never owned those coffee mugs. They can't count the revenue from those coffee mugs. But what Amazon can count, in accordance with GAAP, is the fee paid by the seller of those mugs to Amazon. That's GAAP. But Amazon may want to show just the amount of retail volume that is encompassed by who goes to the site and buys products, whether or not Amazon owned them or it came through Marketplace. That's an example of a pro forma. Amazon may choose to show the total amount of retail volume going through their site. And that would be interesting for people to see. Just the sheer enormity of the amount of retail traffic going through Amazon is legitimate, but we have to be wary because they made it up. They made this pro forma up. There's no GAAP accounting principle for this, right? They're trying to illustrate something. And so they could be very helpful to us as analysts, or they could be a little bit devious or maybe less pure in their intentions. So be careful. The SEC has also warned us about this, and they have a regulation called Reg G talking about the pro formas, and companies must reconcile the GAAP to these non-GAAP measures. And that's a requirement under SEC. And the SEC is also warning us as users to be careful because they're not covered by SEC guidelines on the format of these pro formas. And it's also not GAAP that the FASB would also look at from an accounting profession standpoint. The recommended approach to analysis follow these 7 steps. First, just go to the audit opinion, which is usually 2 pages, and just look if there is an exception. Like normally we would find, as we saw in the first week we got together, the phrase presents fairly. But what if it does not present fairly? Then you want to know right away. So that's why it's step 1. Usually a very simple check the box item. Number 2, look at the notes to the financial statements and see for any unusual disclosures or any unusual practice compared to others in the industry. Third is examine changes in accounting policies where they're changing the rules of the game. These are required to be highlighted to the users. So if they're playing games there, they have to tell you they're playing games. Of course, I'm being skeptical in that phrasing. They have to tell you they're changing policy, right? That's the technically correct phrase. And then we want to compare ratios over time, doing all these financial analyses that we saw in module number 4. And then 5, look at the ratios compared to competitors and consider what's happening on the macroeconomic or industry level. And also look over time. So this is just being good analysts trying to make some sense of the ratios we just generated. 6 is identify these non-recurring items and separate them if you need to really understand what the business is today and where it's going in the future. And finally, recast if necessary. Recasting means we're taking the numbers that's provided by company and we're changing the numbers on our own, right? We're not doing it in conformity to GAAP. We're just trying to understand the underlying economics for the business so we feel free that if we believe something needs to be altered, we can alter it just as professionals. Summarizing Module 5 on operating income, which relates to the details of revenues minus operating expenses. Objective 1 is revenue recognition. We recognize when it's earned, in other words, when we've met performance objectives. L02 is deferred revenue, when we receive cash before we've delivered the product or service, and how do we handle that? Third is foreign currency, and these have both realized and unrealized components that would affect the income statement and balance sheet. Learning objective 4 is accounts receivable and the allowance accounts for uncollectibles, And this shows the revenue cycle of selling things, collecting money, or having customers not pay us and becoming bad debt. And how do we, under GAAP, show our estimated what's called net realizable value or net accounts receivable, and how we can make sure that it is a number that we believe is true. And that's how we did an analysis called aging. And fifth is looking at operating expenses and specifically focusing on R&D and discontinued operations. And finally, looking at the pro formas and how they may be useful to us, but beware, since they're not covered under GAAP or SEC rules or the audit opinion. Buyer beware. But it might be there for good reason by the company when they're really trying to explain their business to you and provide you a better level of understanding. So I'd say be somewhat open-minded on what they're providing in the pro forma, but also be guarded and careful to make sure they're not trying to pull something over on us by doing something outside of the rules of accounting. I will see you in class. Bye-bye.